Hello, beautiful, and welcome to the Moms Talk Sex podcast with me, Maria Ellington, your host. I'm so excited that you're here, and I'm even more excited for this juicy conversation because we have the beautiful Corrie here today. Hi, Corrie.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. This is the first time I have an orgasm coach on this podcast. So I am so excited for this conversation. So how about you introduce yourself and let us know what it is that you do.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, first of all, women, if you can hear this one thing, like what can't we do is always like my thought when it comes, especially when we're talking about our sexuality and orgasms and the power that exists in our body. It is absolutely incredible, incredibly beautiful. And so I am 44 years old. I'm a Sagittarius and I have 5 kids. I have 1 boy and 4 girls, and he's 15. And then my daughters are 14, 10, 9, and 8. I always forget the last three came in 2.5 years. It was a lot of children.
That's a lot of kids.
It was a lot of kids. Um, the nurse I remember jokingly told me, like, oh my gosh, you were made to make babies. And as beautiful of that as that is, sometimes like our sexuality around women it's just not about that always. And I know she meant well and it didn't hurt my feelings, but I've been a life coach for about 6 years, and I've coached on money, relationships, women, leadership, and now I've landed in as an orgasm coach. And it's kind of a fun title because I mean there's sex coaches, which I do, but an orgasm coach is specifically for women has been really fun.
This sounds so cool. Okay, so what is an orgasm coach?
Well, so like a woman's orgasm, first of all, is something that belongs to us. A lot of times we perhaps our conditioning, whatever, culture we grew up in, a lot of times we're taught that our bodies are for other people or that our sexuality is learned through another person. And depending upon if you grew up with religion, even, because that's what part of my story was, is that I should be ashamed of my body. Like my body, I had to protect myself from men, and you can't masturbate, right? Masturbate, you can't do that, right? And although there is a lot of wisdom in teaching young girls about their bodies and when to have sex and not to have sex and all of those things, when it's laced with shame, I think a lot of times women, we prevent ourselves from having extremely powerful pleasure. And our
Right.
bodies are built, and there are 7 different kinds of orgasms that we can have, and that our bodies are built naturally for pleasure. And it just doesn't exist in the bedroom, and it exists out of the bedroom too. And I like to I help women with orgasmic energy, right? It's very much an energetic thing, and accessing it, you can access it no matter what circumstance, what time of day, what's happening in your life. And that's really hard, especially as women. Like it's really hard to comprehend, but you can. I really believe it.
So how did you get to this point? Like, how did you get to having 5 children and now being an orgasm coach?
So I naturally had a very like high sex drive, like only in comparison, right? I can label myself that very, very easy, but I was always interested in it. And I was always like in tune with my body. Like I absolutely love feeling my body, just the whole experience of it. And grew up in a very like high demand, high controlled religion. And so I saved myself for marriage. I got married at 28. Okay. And
Wow.
I was a virgin, or almost 28. And I was so mad. I was like, what is happening here? And I remember when my circle of friends even would complain about their husbands wanting sex. I'm like, girl, you got married at 19. You've been having sex for 7 years, and I'm over here mad, right? And so what happened is 15 years later, after I got divorced and I became a single mom, I have my kids full time. And I was put in a position that I only knew myself sexually in relation to my husband.
Mm.
And for the first time ever, I had started to explore, okay, but what does that mean for me? Like, because I
Yeah.
wasn't sure, like I have since left that religion, but I wasn't sure what to do with this part of me that I felt was beautiful. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm just supposed to stop having sex? And that
Right.
was like the question that kind of threw me into the depths of getting to know this part of me. Because,
Wow. So where did you search? Like, I'm curious when you go from something so confined,
mhm,
right? And you're kind of, and normally that's your people, your community. So it's like, how do you
right.
even step out of that place into something that's so taboo and shameful?
Oh my gosh, girl. Like, I had already been in a life coach in that religion that I consider it a cult. So when I left my faith, I had the biggest identity crisis I had like known to man. I mean, I
Mm.
was in a dark hole of despair, like the God that I knew. I remember praying and being mad at God and saying, "Why did you make me with such a high sex drive? And I want to be intimate with another man." And then also learning that, well, first of all, how to have sex without a man, how to have orgasms. Like I was familiar with vibrators, like I understood masturbation, I understood like physically what my body can do. And I all I did was start to research like pleasure centers of our body. I started researching squirting, like sex toys. And I was like, and some of the best sex I've had has been with myself. Like I dove headfirst into knowing my body as a woman. I was like, if I can push 5 babies out of myself, I was like, I am going to learn, like, I'm going to have an orgasm every single day. And I want to see
Yeah.
what that does for my nervous system. I want to see what that does to my mothering. Because if my body is that powerful, so I just started exploring. I read everything, I opened conversations, I talked to women who were scared. Like I created like a somatic practice for myself, like how to be in tune with my body. Cause, and I started coaching women on it. And I even had one client that was that married for 30 years, never had an orgasm because she was so scared of her body. And that's the thing. Like women are scared, like we're scared of our bodies. And sometimes it's a subconscious thing.
Yeah. That's so true. And that's crazy. And wow, I'm so amazed at your courage. I think it's so strong and powerful that you went from such a dark place to such a light in this world. I talk to so many women that experience sexual trauma, and it
Right?
comes in so many different ways. And with what you're talking about, it seems like even being married to somebody that doesn't have as much of a sex drive can be a sexual trauma.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I experienced like I've had sexual abuse. I've been physically abused. So I've have abuse like as part of my background. So I knew that some of that abuse like so our brain is the biggest sex organ in the body, right? And
Yeah.
I knew that I had to address the belief system about myself. So when I was abused, I had to start looking at what did I subconsciously then create? What did I create consciously? Right? I had to start, I mean, I just dove so far as deep as I can. So when I say that, like, I went to dark places because I had no idea how much of my worth and my value was found in how much men wanted my body because that came from sexual trauma. Like,
Wow.
like my nervous system was wired to believe that I was created for men.
Yeah.
And I mean, not all women take on that belief, but that's what was part of my journey in my sexual trauma.
I just had actually a client session and we were talking about how her dad owned her body. And
Yeah.
so even though there was no sexual trauma there, but just the notion of that he's the dad, he owns her body until she's married to somebody else and then they own her. And that was like
Yeah.
such a huge revelation. And when we were diving into the body, it was like, oh, it's something you're actually really holding energetically in your body, these structures. When we're
Yeah.
talking about them, and if you're listening and you feel it activating, it's because it's probably something in you also, right? And so, what an awareness to be able to say, like, no, I'm not living my life according to that belief anymore. I'm switching
Yeah.
it around and giving the power back to me. And so when you're saying like I had the best orgasm of my life by myself, how does that also leave a door open to a partner then?
Right. Like I as you were talking, one of the things that was coming through to me was like, I don't I don't know how whole us women can actually feel unless we completely like energetically and where we are embodied with the belief that we are autonomous.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And so when you have that, it's when you have that, like your perspective on your partner, on your relationships, in the way that you interact with men, it's not like, I'm badass and I'm better than you because I own my body. It's like this subtlety. It's like this beauty. It's this light that you start walking around, like orgasmic energy, right?
Yeah.
Where you really do believe like that you have autonomy over your spirituality and your sexuality, which I believe are one and the same.
Yeah. Like just hearing you talk about it, it's like being in your power,
Yeah,
being present in your power and claiming it and owning it as your own and choosing it every single day and
right.
not having any doubts, right? It's
Yeah.
that total confidence of like, I'm the goddess. That's who I am. That's how I was
Yeah.
born to be. I love that. So, what are a few tips that you can give to women to orgasm if they're not experiencing it, if they're not feeling it, if they're not getting there with a partner or by themselves? Like, what would be, I don't know, a few things that you can say that you can start, that the women can start playing with at home to get more
Yeah, this
comfortable?
is, and I don't know your audience very well. So for those who I would just encourage to be open to like kind of receive, that's as feminine women, right? That's really hard for us when we're not in tune with our bodies. Like what I'm about to say, because it sounds a little weird, but
We've
I would
heard weird on this podcast. Don't
okay.
worry.
Well, I would get in front of a mirror and I would talk to your vagina. I would talk to your vulvus. I would talk to your clitoris. I would look at your body and start absorbing the beauty of it. I would look at yourself in the eyes. And a lot of times I have to start my client session this way where we just put our hand over our heart and whatever their name is. And I'm like, I love you, Corrie. Like, get into your body. And I don't know what my vagina looked like before I got married and had kids because I was so scared to look. Right. And so exploring my vagina, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know I have nothing to compare it to after having five natural births. I don't know what shifted or what changed, but I would start enjoying your body, like touch your body and slowly breathe into it and have a conversation. And I remember the first time that I ever did this, I just started crying because like it spoke back to me. Like when you can have a conversation with parts of your body and the wisdom that it carries. I remember like having this discussion with it and I remember just hearing like the sadness that came from like this is a beautiful part of me and people use it like to make fun of other people, like stop being such a cunt. Like they just use the vulgarity of that part of women and um they make fun of each other, and I thought like pussy, like men stop being a pussy. And I was like, oh my gosh, like like you said, our bodies are carrying generations of belief systems and women's sexuality has been so taboo literally until our lifetime. Like they
Yeah,
haven't even begun to study the power of it.
right. And I truly believe that it's because the minute we actually reclaim that,
Yeah.
this whole reality will just change.
Right.
And that's the goal.
Yeah. And I would tell women too, like, this is probably even harder. Like, you have to stop judging yourself and your experience. You have to stop, like our bodies, we oftentimes will, it's normal for women to pass through like self-betrayal when we understand like how bad we've treated our bodies, how much we look at it, how disappointing it can be. I remember, giving birth to my second child, like a lot of self-betrayal came up because I had her in 20 minutes and I remember being mad like because my body went into shock and I was mad. I was like, we were supposed to enjoy this, but my body was doing the most protective thing it could. And I didn't understand that until years later.
Yeah,
Our bodies are so protective of us and they're so full of wisdom. They're
they
beautiful.
are. The body holds all the secrets.
I know. And our vagina has a lot. You should talk
Yeah,
to her.
I do.
I bet you do, girl. I bet you do.
I do. I actually, one of the when I was rewiring my brain in the beginning of my process of doing this work, and one of the things was the more orgasms I have, the more money I make.
Oh
Was
yeah,
very because it was so connected to me, like power, money, sex, all connected.
it is all well, because it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, oh my gosh, thank you for this amazing conversation. I'm so excited that you're here, and we might do a part two to this because there's another piece we would like to talk about. But if you guys have any questions for Corrie, we have her links in the podcast notes. You can find her there. And can they find you anywhere else?
I mean, Facebook right now, my website is just not been my friend lately.
Yeah,
So it's just Corrie Woods, CorrieWoods. You can come and enjoy the conversation that we have on Facebook and Instagram.
perfect. I love it. So thank you so much for being with me here today. Thank you for listening, and I hope you tune in again next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.